but it is 9:01, so I would like to call the Finance Committee to order. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any additions, omissions, approval or polls or anything? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. So we now have an agenda. Next up is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed. Motion carried. So we have approval of the minutes. So our first business item is the fiscal year 2021 year-end report.
And you want to provide that?
Okay, let's, can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can't, you turned yourself, there you go.
Okay, you can hear me now. Good morning,
Now I
everyone.
can hear you. I was trying to figure out what you were saying.
I'm learning a foreign language. Anyhow, in my spare time. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see y'all. So behind tab number F3 is the fiscal year 2021 year-end report. And it's a good report. It's great to share positive results and news on our fiscal year end. And so we'll cover the revenues first and then the expenditures, and then we'll move on to our fund balance sheet. So on page 1, the revenue, we collected $2,577,199, slightly over what we budgeted of $2,562,000. And part of that,
Basically close.
yes, correct, definitely. And I'll highlight the program areas where the impacts were. Title V, we did collect $26,000 over our original budget, and that had to do with one, that we lost a source, a census. They no longer met the eligibility guidelines and the parameters to maintain their Title V permit. Warehouser submitted some erroneous data during the emission inventory and collection of data. Therefore, their original bill was underestimated, and so their share had to be corrected. And so we received some additional dollars from them. And then Interfor, a new source, became a new Title V source on June of 2021. So they were prorated a portion of Title V fees. That's the result of the additional $26,000, which definitely helped considering the additional workload that was put into the Title V program during the course of the year. We also collected $166,000 over our original budget for the NOC program. We budgeted $107,000. We collected $273,000. Why, you ask? Well, a lot of sources took the opportunity to make changes to their existing equipment and planning. And of course, there's a cost of doing business, right? And with our review of by our engineers, and it definitely gave them a lot of workload. Again, a good timing, bad timing with COVID, good timing for the staff being able to fill a lot of time with the workload. Asbestos, we had budgeted $122,000 and collected $23,000 over the original budget. Again, there's still a lot of activity happening in our communities, our 6 county regions. So
Is that our biggest construction year ever?
No, sir.
Okay.
I would have to pull up my cash flow report, and I can do that.
No, I'm no big deal. I was just curious. I figured if it was, you would know. So no worries.
That's a good question though, Jim. I know we've had higher years, but again, it's another active year in our community with demos and with asbestos surveys happening, and so that's a good thing.
In my tenure here, it's one of the, in terms of new source review, it's one of the largest increases, over budget that I've seen that I can remember. People were doing remodeling, people were home, so they were doing more work on their homes too, and that's why it was the asbestos pieces up, et cetera. So it's a combination of things. But in terms of the notice of construction, this is more revenue than I remember in the recent past.
Is that a leading indicator to higher registrations coming up because people have bigger and different projects, or is that there's not a connection there?
Yeah, I don't think, our registrations so far, they're coming in okay this year, better than I think last year. We didn't get, we had some businesses closed. So it doesn't affect registration. The question I have is, now that industry has brought on these new, they've made some improvements, and remember, we have a lot of wood product industries, that the question will be what, and right now, after 2 months, we're at about 50,000 for notice of construction. But I don't expect to have that huge increase this fiscal year than we did last fiscal year, because the businesses were, sorry, probably muffled. The businesses were probably stepping up to remember the number of houses that were built last year, and the housing market itself was crazy. So I hope that we meet our budget this year. We increased it over the norm. I think we said 140,000 for this fiscal year, and we had 107,000 last fiscal year is our budget number. But I don't expect us to come in the 200,000 range, because I think the companies have made the increase in prescriptions to be able to handle the larger amount of work that they had and may continue to have. But I think that the industries are now stepped to the plate and able to handle it. I'm hoping that on registration that we don't have businesses closed this year, so that will be good. That registration will be good. I'm hoping.
Cool.
Yeah, good questions. I guess a key note for Cynthia when she does share with the overall board the budget update is, it's correct. NOC, this has been our highest year. 273,000 was the highest year dating back to my time, 2004.
Wow.
So yeah, this is definitely the highest year. I did bring up my revenue for the prior period of time, and for asbestos, it's one of our highest years. Yes, 145, but 2019 we collected 157,000. And so we're actually hovering about 140-ish thousand over the last, 2014. We've been hovering on the last 7 years. We're averaging 135,000. So yeah, it's pretty dynamic, the numbers, the averages, and but yeah, by far the 273,000 received from NOC, we've not come close to in at least history I've been here.
That's cool.
So
Our sources are making jobs. I like it.
yeah, very true, very true. And that's, again, good additional news, positive news to share with the board that, again, all 6 counties are doing very well. So we just covered asbestos, and same way with land clearing. I don't look at it as a positive, but we budgeted 15,500 and we collected 33,000. So more people, sure, they're burning. I'll let you think what you want there, but we did go over budget. On the core, federal and state, as you know, that's one of our grants where it's cyclical in the terms of when I request reimbursement, drawdowns. Like all the grants, it's always you incur the cost first, you request reimbursement. And so you'll see that we budgeted 187,000 for the federal, 135 for the state. We did collect our share of both of those core fundings, but they were received in July of 2021, following our fiscal year end. For the fines, we budgeted 55,000. We collected 104,000 over our budget. We collected almost 160,000 in fines. I know Fran will want to share notes on, and that was I'm going to let her share the notes and where the revenue came from, because it was primarily from a couple sources. And then our investment income, we budgeted 25, and we did collect 15. We thought it would be higher. The treasurer's office really works hard investing our funds along with a number of other special purpose districts and their own and other local government entities. And so we definitely lowered that for fiscal year 2022. The residual, and part of that, I know, Jim, you had asked, how come we're not making more money a couple meetings ago? But even the Fed's not charging banks nothing on interest. Well, how come we're not making more money on our own personal savings? And I'm sorry, this seems a little backwards to me, but we're letting them use our money too. But unfortunately, I guess that's just the way, economics works. So residual fund for the administration, we budgeted 257. We're not using anything. We're going to actually be adding money to our general fund. And that's about 127,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't it? So that's the revenue piece. And
So do we need to staff up?
No, we're fine.
Fran,
Okay.
On the fines piece of it, Sierra Pacific, we had strong, long negotiations. Basically what happened was they have dry kilns. They had 8 dry kilns, and they were told a year ahead by staff that they needed to put in, they needed to do, an asbestos survey. They needed to do, if they were going to, destroy the stuff, they need to do notification for all of that to, take it all down. And then they need to put in notice of construction for the new dry kilns. They didn't do any of that. And when Robert was out doing an inspection, he saw that they had already demolished and were starting to build. Asbestos, I don't think was a piece of it, but they kept going. The one thing they didn't do, which I appreciate, was they didn't operate. So they only took down 2 of the 8 dry kilns. And so I met with the owner of the company and the site manager, and we, really worked things out. We negotiated a settlement, but there were 2. Some of it went into notice of construction because there was work that was done by staff as part of the investigation, and part of it went into fines. And so that's part of the money that Lynn was talking about for notice of construction. There's a little bit in there, but the majority of it is in fines. I also made sure that because they were doing these, cyclically, they weren't taking all 8 down, that they made sure that they did all of the, the destruction of the other ones before their permit was up. And the permit expired in July, and Robert checked and everything. So they've worked everything perfectly this time. So they, are replacing the dry kilns 2 at a time. It gives them the ability to process much faster, which is what they need to do during this economic upturn for wood products. So they learned a real hard lesson, but they're good folks to work with. They understood what they did, and I am fairly sure they will never do that again. So the last time they did something like this was, I think, 2002, I think. They had a major fine back then. So we're hoping that, we hate to give these industries big fines, but the key is we want them to learn and not do it again. We don't want this to happen again. So that's the fine piece.
are there any questions on the revenue before we move on to the expenditure summary?
Just a minor one. Is the negative in the wood stove bounty just the lag in billing for reimbursement?
Correct.
Okay,
we
cool.
actually received that quarterly reimbursement in July.
Cool. Okay, perfect.
Question, thank you.
And I know Dan, during his report, will talk about we're going to have our new grant. It took forever, but hopefully soon, but hopefully by the end of September, we'll be able to start processing new wood stove, wood smoke reduction grant monies and projects. So ecology took forever.
Okay.
Yeah, we only turned back $1,250 in our recent allocation with ecology. So that was good. And though we received them because, we had amendment after amendment, and we did very well expending our funds, and having just $1,200 remaining was really good compared to other jurisdictions that had a couple $100,000. So,
And the reason that we had money remaining was twofold. Number one, it took us forever to get the amendment from ecology. I mean, we ended up having 6 weeks or 2 months maybe to spend it all, $10,000. And, because people were purchasing stoves and, with the pandemic and shipping issues, the equipment wasn't available. So it was on the retail side as well as couldn't free up the money to be able to allocate because ecology was taking forever.
okay, so moving on to our expenditures. For the payroll, we were underspent by about 62,000. That had to do with, we had a vacancy in our compliance division for about 3 months. And also on the benefits side, the AWC Benefit Health Trust, we had savings there in the premiums that they charge us. For the non-payroll expenditures, a couple areas there. The professional services line, we had budgeted $43,800 and spent $54,000 of that. What was not in the $43,000 original budget was the purchase of a GovQA, which assists in the public information requests that we track here at our office. So hopefully it's making Debbie's life easier. And but we have since then added the $6,400 a year that we get charged for the use of their software and their management system. Well worth the funds that are dedicated to that. So to break down that $54,000, $8,200 was a result of the GovQA at $6,400, and then a purchase for staff training for cybersecurity, know before, at $1,800. And that's actually, I think, a 3-year subscription. It's either 3 or 5. I think it's 3-year, but another value to give staff, the important training of cybersecurity out there. We passed through 42,000 on to our attorneys, so for their hard work during the course of the year. And then the remaining $4,253 was legal services, where we had contracted with Mason County Sheriff, Pacific Northwest, Sound Publishing, Grays Harbor County Sheriff, ABC Legal, for the issuance of certified mails, deliveries having to do with notice of violations. So that was a chunk of change there. So that's where we came up with the 54,000. And then of course there's advertising of our public hearings, which is legal notices that go into our regular our newspapers. And then vehicle purchase, we budgeted 20,000 for a new vehicle, and we didn't obviously spend that. For our building and operations, we budgeted 107 and spent 119. We did come back to the board seeking approval to make an additional debt service payment because of the refunding of the bond and the reissuance of a new bond at a better interest rate. And we have already talked about that. We went from 2.4% interest to 0.703 interest, saving us, again, more money. Yay.
Lynn,
Yes, sir.
can you remind me on the vehicle, did we carry that forward into this year's budget so you have it available, or I guess I don't know if you're still planning on buying one. I can't remember what you decided.
I have that right here. So for vehicle, we do have 20,000
Okay, cool.
fiscal year 2022 and nothing in 2023 at this point, but yes.
Okay, cool. Good.
So it's interesting you also bring that up because, with the governor's, I guess, I don't know if he issued a resolution or a directive that all local governments are required to purchase electric vehicles or alternative fuel vehicles. I think after 2018, 2019. So I'm gonna have to look into that to see how that affects us. Are you familiar with that, Jim, or Cynthia or Randy? What the requirement
Yeah.
local governments are supposed to be at 100%?
They, at one time, that was kind of postponed temporarily, but now I'm not sure. I think now it's required, and I don't know what they do about maintenance vehicles, because obviously Public Works and others, that may be difficult to have.
All right.
Yeah, I think there's some language like as is reasonable or something.
Yeah,
But also it must not be a very fast timeline because we're still planning for the full electrification of our fleet. We're not even close in Olympia. So
Right.
that's true.
Yeah, Cindy, you're right. They did extend it. And yes, it's true, Jim, that there are some exceptions to the departments that use these, larger vehicles that you can't possibly use electrification on, whether it be a dump truck or garbage trucks or, that would be interesting.
garbage trucks and fire trucks are coming online all across North America. So
Yeah.
do we have charging stations on site?
No, we do not.
And our difficulty with charging stations in the Olympic Peninsula is, that makes, especially for instance, the truck that goes to Chica Peak, there'd be no way that at this point we could have an electric vehicle go to Chica Peak. So there aren't enough charging stations out on around 101 to be able to. So in Olympia we could do it, but out when we get out further into the region, it would be very difficult at this point. I
think that's been changing quite a bit, but I don't know like the time and the range. There's a lot more on the peninsula than there used to be, and I think I don't know how far it is from PA to Chica Peak. So
We've been putting them in up here in Mason County. I have several in North Mason. We're putting in more at the transit station up in North Mason that we're building the park and ride. We have just installed one on park and ride in downtown Shelton. We're also installing them up at the Mason Transit Authority and other locations.
Right.
And we could look at a hybrid too, where, it's electric and there's gasoline backup. That would work. So if we couldn't charge it, we'd have the gasoline for backup. So we could look at hybrid also.
seems like we should call PSE and get a grant for solar and electric charging stations on site before we could take the fleet electric.
Yeah.
And/or Commerce. Commerce has money also. But
Right.
the local governments are not required to retrofit their vehicles or replace them before the end of their useful lives. So that is in there. And the exemption for emergency vehicles, police, fire, and other emergency response vehicles are sort of exempt from this. So,
Right.
Well, there are absolutely grants out there to put these in, and I would think that we'd be smart enough to definitely have the grants and have it in place on our own location before we start switching over completely.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, and I don't know if this program still exists, but Olympia, when we had our first ones installed, we leased Nissan Leaf, Nissan, is that the Leaf?
Yeah.
Yeah, that they provided the charging stations for free
Oh, really? Wow.
because we leased the vehicles, and we did that one time, and then we bought them and didn't do the lease anymore.
wow. Yeah, leave
Yeah,
it.
we
But you
have-
don't buy new vehicles, so I don't know how that washes out although you might want to buy new vehicles when we switch because of range and current technology, right?
When we buy vehicles, we do buy new vehicles.
Oh, I thought you were buying slightly used most of the time.
No, we sell our old vehicles.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Okay, sorry, my bad. I should stop asking questions. I'm making this too long.
Okay.
Sorry, Randy and Cynthia.
We'll be keeping you updated on as we get closer to changing out and purchasing another vehicle. So, and following the rules.
And I know that I've seen, the ability to sell an old vehicle is great right now because people, the dealerships are having trouble getting new vehicles because they can't get the chips.
Right.
So I would like to wait at least maybe till spring. So, if we're going to think about replacing another one of our vehicles, because I want to be, well, I won't be here, but whoever's here to be able to bargain. I always go in with a number in my head that I'm willing to negotiate. And so I would hope that that person would, so, but you can't negotiate at this point because the inventory is not there. So I always like to negotiate.
It'd be interesting, and I'm sorry, I said I'd stop, but it'd be interesting to see if there's a consortium. Like I know there's a couple that we're partners with, like other cities where they buy fire engines and stuff on a master contract. Like maybe somebody's doing something like that with EV where we could get in on a bigger order.
Got it. Yeah, that's something I could contact DES, who holds all the master contracts with vendors.
Right.
So that's I'm gonna write that down. DES.
Contact Transit, guys. They're the ones that are in the front line of all of this.
I'm sorry, what was that, Randy?
Contact Transit, they're on the front line of all of this. That's where we got and went through to get all our grants and to do all our stuff, Transit.
Oh, interesting.
So intercity transit for us, you mean, would that be the?
Yeah, that's our authority. Theirs is
Yeah.
Mason Transit.
Yeah.
Transit.
I'm on the board of our transit, and I can tell you right now, we're riding that pony like a racehorse.
Okay.
Good.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, and so we just covered our building operations and maintenance, doing good. And then our operational programs such as our wood smoke reduction, we budgeted 135, we spent almost 120. But we ended up with returning $1,200 to ecology. Community scale air toxics, we had budgeted 12,000. We only spent $168, and really that had to do with we didn't have to pay fees to have Odell Hadley's report published in a publication. So she found a publisher that didn't charge, so we didn't
Oh,
have to
good.
pay funds,
Wow.
and EPA got to retain those funds and reissue them to another entity. So we underspent by 113,000 on our expenditures, and with the underspending of 113,000 and the additional revenue of 14,000, 127,000 is being transferred into our general fund.
Wow.
Yeah, so any questions from anyone on our comparative summary of revenue and expenditures? Before we move on to page 2, our fund balance.
Nice work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
A good team to make all this happen too.
And I have to say, staff did a phenomenal job working remotely. I mean, it's much more difficult, but all staff did a great job. And the staff that were here, like Debbie and Lynn were here all the time, and Jackie, they really need to be commended for holding down the fort. And they picked up things that other people couldn't do because they were remote. But ORCAA did well, and I'm proud of the staff. I'm really proud of the staff.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a timeline chart with the money, and then you show the blip of the recession and the blip of COVID and what we did through both of them. It's a pretty phenomenal organization.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we really need to give thanks to the folks, as I say, like Lynn and Debbie and Jackie, who were here through thick and thin and did pick up things that other people couldn't do because they were remote. And so we owe them a huge debt of gratitude for that too.
All right, moving on to the fund balance. We started July 2020 with 1,721,000, and with our revenue and less our expenditures, we ended the year on, whoops, I see a typo there. It should be June 30th, not March 31. My apologies. I just put that there to see if anyone else noticed.
You're not supposed to tell us then.
So my apologies. So June 30th, 2021, we ended with 1,848,692. So that's an important piece there, Cynthia, if you want to share that during your report.
I will.
So again, my apologies. Moving down to the breakout of that 1.8 million, we have $830,000 that we have set aside in contingency and capital funds. I won't go into the, detailing those out because they're all in front of you. But we have 1,162,000 as an unreserved fund balance. So I also listed some additional information that identifies the debt service that we have remaining with Thurston County Treasurer's Office, 44,273. That's a celebration point right there. So
That's January we pay it?
it's
December.
December of
December.
2022 is our final,
Oh.
is our final debt service payment.
Oh, I thought it was this December.
No, 2022. We paid the addition, we paid 45 in, what was it, May, Lynn?
Oh, that substituted this winter's payment. Got it.
Okay.
We
Okay.
just have a small interest payment.
Right. And remember, in October, we've got the treasurer coming to do a presentation.
And then our Department of Retirement Pension liability is 495,000. Now that has nothing to do with the $1.8 million fund balance we have. That's just on the balance sheet in the event something happens, which it likely won't. We all have that on our balance sheet, actually. So other than that, it's again a good report. I'm pleased to share it with y'all. And any questions that we have on the financial report?
So
No,
I have two just related to Fran's transition, because I'm thinking ahead about new CEOs and how eager they can be to, look at cash and look at ways to spend it. And so I just wanted to make sure we feel good about the way the reserve policies are written. I mean, I think the board is pretty solid on keeping the strings tight, but just wanted to say that out loud. And then also to say, I know it's a lot to ask, but if there's major maintenance items that need to be completed on the building, or this kind of roof and solar project that we've been talking about and some HVAC, it would be great to get those things underway so the new CEO can focus on the operations and kind of have that stuff already happening, or getting ready to happen next year. So those are just my two thoughts, but this is amazing. Like, good job.
Yeah, great. No, a lot of information there, Jim. Thank you for the kind words and y'all. So to answer first your question, I think the resolutions we have in place for our reserve levels are there.
Okay.
The board cannot, the staff cannot use any of these contingency funds unless the board authorizes it. So Lynn can't, Fran can't, and Debbie cannot use any of these funds for maintenance, her database. We can't do that.
Okay.
It requires a resolution by the board to use those funds, and a resolution by the board to undedicate those funds as well. If the board wanted to remove some of those funds, or if the new director did, he or she would have to come to the board to get that approval, and specifically to use those funds. Speaking of,
you're breaking up, Lynn.
speaking of, sorry, I'm not sure why.
Then you're breaking up. You weren't before. Well, she's fixing that. Let me just say that part of my, I'm developing a transition plan because I think it's important to do that for the new person. And so part of the transition plan is to look at the things that need to be done over the next number of years. And part of what I was hoping to wait for on some of the big things for the building was to wait until we're no longer making a mortgage payment, because that would, free up 40,000 or whatever a year. Because when we get into doing things like hopefully we can get some grants, and Lynn's been working, on the solar piece of it, that we can, it's still going to be very expensive. So there are a number of things that we need to do capital-wise on this building. We've got time, and again, that's part of my transition with the new person, is to say these are the kinds of things, these are things that need to be done. This is a potential timeline and funding opportunities, so that they don't walk into this thing cold. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that. That's actually where my mind was going too, is I hope you'll write a paragraph in there about your own financial strategies, because just the ability to, how to codify what you've done, right? Like budgeting for dipping into the general fund every year and never having to since the Great Recession. That's pretty significant. And I don't think that a lot of organizations could replicate that. So, Lynn and Fran, write down what makes your relationship and the staff team get us there so that we can memorialize it. And I think it's really the level of the ability you have of working together as a team. Honestly, that's my hunch from the outside and watching it. Like, you do a phenomenal job, and when work grows, you kind of distribute it and you manage to get it done. So.
Thank you, and I agree.
Yeah, when I first came on the board, like 2010, we were struggling somewhat at first to get us past that, where we had to draw on reserves and stuff. And now we're pretty solid, it seems to me.
I mean, I came out in 2009, and I know that there was a year or maybe two where we didn't give any COLAs, no cost of livings.
Yes.
Really, I felt very strongly that we not lay anybody off. And so in the back of my head, as I thought about, work, et cetera, and how we would manage it, I did not want to lay anybody off. And so thankfully that's been the case for my entire tenure.
Yeah.
But, Lynn and I really do work with, that communication is absolutely incredibly important. And it's not that, it's Lynn and I working it together and looking at issues back and forth, but it's also the managers being able to evaluate the workload and where things are going in the future. So that communication and the willingness to say, this is what I need, or this is what I could forego, is really critical. So the team needs to work well together. And again, I'm hoping to be able to provide all of that insight to the new person.
Cool.
I feel strongly about that. Even when I left DNR, I knew I was leaving that agency, and I left aquatics with a book, basically, because I want, I care about where I'm working. It's important to me. I care about the staff here, and I want to make sure that, not everything that I've done is perfect. There's no question about that, but I want to make sure that whoever comes in has the background they need to be able to just step in and get moving. So I'm going to try to do that.
I'll be looking for what board you're serving on after you retire, because I want to watch what they do.
I want to try to secure the landscape because
Then you break it up.
really.
Sorry. Can't hear you at all now.
So are we done with everything? Does anybody else have any more questions or anything?
Wait, did Lynn may have something more? Maybe she needs to run down here. Why don't
Or
you
in the chat, Lynn.
just come on downstairs.
Oh,
She's coming down.
I don't know.
I don't know what happened.
I
Sorry.
don't know either. I didn't do anything strange. Hi, I'm here. So we're 60. The other thing I just wanted to add was, the HVAC, we're definitely going to wait on until our new director, and the roof and solar go hand in hand. Fran, myself, and Mark Gooden all met with a solar engineer, and he did provide a couple recommendations. And this, again, it'll be a nice introduction with the new director to review, look at, because yes, we do want to do the roof and the solar simultaneously. It only makes sense. And our roof actually is in good condition, and that's per the engineer that was here on site and did an evaluation. And the
how long
rest-
does it have left?
Well, that's hard to say. He didn't get up there as much as he would have liked to. He didn't get up on top of the roof. But from a visual appearance, and he's evaluated a number of roofs. This one didn't appear to be on its last leg. I mean, he thinks we still have a few more years for sure.
Okay.
So, but then he's not the specialist on the roof. So
I went through that when I had mine installed, and it's actually really easy to take the panels off and re-roof.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So you don't have to put them together in the same project.
Yeah. So we were happy to have him come and provide the.
I mean, I think if we move sooner than later on solar, we get out of that PSE bill and pay for the interest on the building for the last payments.
My question is our roof solar ready? Because you can't put solar on unless it's designed a certain way to,
Yes, he said that we would be placing it on our south, obviously, roof line. And that's the roof line that doesn't have a lot of steepness, depth to it. So he says we have actually a good roof line to actually accommodate the solar panels.
Did you get a bid?
Yes, sir, we did. I don't have it with me because I wasn't expecting to provide an update, but I can quickly grab that if you'd like.
Yeah, you just send us a note with the total cost and how many, how big the system is in whatever the gigawatt or megawatt or whatever. I don't remember.
Will do. Will
Cool.
do.
I'm inclined to go into cash and get it done, but that's just me.
Okay, and then the last thing I had, I'll have to be coming to the board for a budget amendment when we do, when Fran thinks she's leaving us, right? Anyhow, we'll have a payout for her vacation and her sick time. And I have some other ideas. Okay, and Fran says she has some other ideas, but either way, I still have to, I think I know where you're going now. So that's something that we'll want to discuss maybe at October's finance meeting. Is that, because we're gonna be meeting again in October to discuss our first quarter finances, first quarter report. And maybe we can talk then about Fran's ideas and the budget with the payout that we have.
Okay.
It's about,
Okay.
about 70 grand.
So in my own head, I'm, again, I want to wait to see who we get for candidates, who we get for candidates, because that affects sort of the transition plans, et cetera. So I've got a couple ideas in my head about, how I would transition out. But I want to see what the pool looks like before, and I can talk, I can share with Lynn, sort of thinking I've got sort of two options. in
I'm
my
already
head.
reading your mind. I got it right here. I'm seeing it.
So I want to kind of wait to see what we get for applicants before I really.
so my quick question, do you always, because people retire, there's always this thing about costs for retirement and vacation time, et cetera. Do you have a bucket to put contingencies of people retiring in so that it's not coming, you have prepared for it? Does
Yeah.
it?
One of the contingency reserve funds we have includes a vacation and sick leave payout. So June 30th of every year, I calculate the balances for vacation and comp time for each staff member, calculate that with their hourly rate, and we book that on the balance sheet.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
I'm glad you asked it that way because it's not big enough for all of the directors to retire in the next 7 years. So we're going to need to, not that they are, but I know we're getting close to that kind of a turnover rate in the
Yeah.
next half a decade or more.
Right, but we know, and Lynn knows sort of the basic timeline for the older staff. So we
Okay.
know that.
Not the older staff, certain staff. We're not old yet.
There you go.
Speak for yourself, Brad.
So yeah, so we have 213,000 set aside right now based on accruals as of June 30th, 2021.
Okay. Okay. So is there anything else?
That's all I have to report, unless you have any further questions.
Is there any other questions? Randy or Jim?
No.
Well, seeing none, I guess we can adjourn the finance committee. I assume we'll stay on here until we come back on, correct?
I would assume we'll stop the
Just
video.
mute, yeah.
Yeah, we'll stop the video for 15 minutes.
Mhm.
Yeah, but we're still on the same link.
Same Zoom. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so we will see you in about 15 minutes then.